Good morning, Africa on iAfrica TV. It's 10:30 in our studios in Banjul, and this is another edition of the weekly ministerial press briefing, and we'll be linking live. At there, iAfrica TV will be linking live, but before that we will have short analysis of the last press briefing with the Minister of Information and Communication Infrastructure, Ibrahim Masila, and some of the talking points that were made during the last ministerial press briefing. I am with my colleague here, Amadou Kante. We will start. Good morning, Amadou.
Yes, thank you very much, Julde. Good morning, and good morning to our viewers who are right now with us. Yeah, like we said, it's another ministerial update from the Minister of Information, and we are looking forward to today's update as well. Of course, as you mentioned, we'll be looking back or reflecting on some of the pertinent issues that he discussed last week, and you know, of course, and also look for today's discussion as well, update.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll be taking you through the whole press briefing, but before that we will start with the issues, some of the main talking points that the Minister of Information and Communication Infrastructure, Ibrahim Masila, made during last week's press briefing. This morning, of course, Amadou, he talked about so many issues, very important issues during the last briefing. And of course, some of the questions that were raised by journalists as well, but also he promised to talk about other issues and other questions that were not, he was not privy to, or he did not have much information. He promised to talk about those issues this week. Last week, he talked about the construction of a temporary treatment facilities in Esau, Jara and Bansang, the government of the Gambia, in efforts to combat the spread of COVID-19 in the Gambia. Yes. And of course, he also talked about the issue of false information and the like, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. And he said the government of the Gambia are working tirelessly with local government authorities, chief, alcalolus and others to make sure they really tackle the issue of false information, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. Amadou.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Yes, as I was about to say, of course, last week, like you mentioned, the minister spoke about very important matters, and he touched on very pivotal issues with regards to the government's, plan, and of course, operations on fighting the COVID-19 in the country. And like he said, in terms of, spreading out the, treatment centers across the country, and of course, he mentioned, I think he gave out some of course, I wouldn't call it villages or whatever, yeah, but within the region, sort of part of the region, there were some city, how would I call towns or whatever, yeah, which he mentioned that efforts are on the way to make sure that facilities are put in those places, and in a bid to make sure that they would, make sure the people that are also living around that part of the country would have equally the opportunity to be treated for the virus.
Yeah, very well. Right now, he also did mention about the
press conference, which is organized by the Ministry of Information and Communication Infrastructure through the Office of the Gambia Government Spokesperson. Today we'll start with the Office of the Vice President with update by the National Disaster and Management Agency NDMA on the recent floods caused by heavy rains throughout the Gambia. The National Disaster and Management Agency, NDMA, has reported that the recent flash floods and windstorms have affected 20,708 persons from 912 households in different parts of the country. Upper River region is the hardest hit, with more than 6,000 persons affected. The affected families need assistance in the form of food, shelter, and clothing as the rains progress. In some parts of the country, farmlands, foods and seed stores, and school buildings were partially or severely damaged. The National Disaster and Management Agency, NDMA, has also recorded damage to 84 water points and 151 sanitary facilities. Some of these facilities are submerged in the flooded waters. The NDMA structures across the country, together with relevant partners, are currently collecting data on the impact of the climate hazards and man-induced disasters. Meanwhile, the government of the Gambia, upon request from the National Disaster Management Agency, has pledged $15 million to conduct a rapid response to the disaster victims across the country. The Ministry of Justice and Attorney General's chambers, and this is an update on the promulgation of the draft constitution process. On the 14th September 2020, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice will table the Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia 2020 Promulgation Bill 2020. The bill intends to completely repeal the 1997 Constitution and replace it with the new draft Constitution. The Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia 2020 is promulgated in accordance with the provisions of Section 226 of the 1997 Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia. The stages involved in the passing of this bill at the National Assembly of the Gambia are as follows. First stage. At this level, the clerk will read aloud the subtitle of the bill to the plenary, and nothing is done at this stage. Second reading. At this stage, the bill is read for a second time, and general merits and principles of the bill may be debated and amended. And finally, the third reading. At this stage, the bill is presented again to the whole assembly, and after a debate by the members, a vote is taken on whether the bill should be accepted or rejected. A majority vote of 3/4 of all the members of the National Assembly is needed to have the bill passed. After the second and third reading of the bill, and provided it is passed by the National Assembly, the bill will be referred to the Independent Electoral Commission for referendum. The Independent Electoral Commission will, within 6 months of such reference, hold a referendum on the Constitution in which 50% of the registered voters must vote, and 75% of those who voted must vote in support of the new Constitution. If at least 75% of voters vote in favor of the Constitution, the Speaker of the National Assembly will deliver a certificate to the President to show that the bill has passed through all the legislative processes at the National Assembly. Then the chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission will also deliver a certificate to the President to show that the bill has gone through a referendum and passed. After the receipt of the two certificates, the President will assent to the bill within 7 days. Only then that the draft Constitution would be promulgated and repeal the 1997 Constitution. The Ministry of Petroleum and Energy, and this is an update from the National Water and Electricity Company Limited, NAWEC. I will start with the situation of power supply in the country. The current available generation capacity is 67 megawatts, as opposed to the current daily demand of about 70 megawatts. Because of the deficit between demand and supply, NAWEC is forced to carry out limited load shedding during evening peak demand. However, frantic efforts are being made to recover at least 25 to 30 megawatts of lost generation capacity from now towards the end of October 2020. By the end of the year, NAWEC will be operating with a reserve generation capacity to mitigate any shortage caused by network failures due to old transmission and distribution infrastructure. In order to address the challenges on the transmission and distribution infrastructure, World Bank, together with the European Investment Bank, are funding the upgrading and rehabilitation of network through the Gambia Electricity Restoration and Modernization Project. Furthermore, NAWEC has secured grant funding from the World Bank to the tune of $66 million through the ECOWAS Regional Energy Access Program, which is expected to provide access to electricity for communities within 100 kilometers radius from the OMVG substations in Jarasoma and Brikama. Communities in Upper River Region and Central River Region will also benefit from the ongoing Electricity Restoration and Modernization Access Program. Invitation for bids for the extension of transmission and distribution lines between Lamenkoto in the Central River Region and Diabugu in the Upper River Region, covering about 60 villages, was launched just recently. And now this one is the situation of water supply in the country. NAWEC has started an ambitious project funded through the Indian Line of Credit. Communities within the Greater Banjul area will be provided access to potable drinking water. The implementation of this well advanced, and in a few months, most or all the boreholes will be in operation. NAWEC is also getting an emergency COVID response funding from the World Bank, the French Development Agency, and the OIC Secretariat for water projects to meet the growing demand. The Ministry of Agriculture. The Ministry of Agriculture, in its bid to amplify agricultural development in schools, has established agro-pastoral field schools in the northern and southern parts of the Central River Region, Upper River Region, and Lower River Region. These schools are being used as knowledge and skills transfer convergences to enhance and boost agricultural productivity. The Ministry of Agriculture also continues to support and collaborate with commercial poultry schemes in different parts of the country. Support has been extended to 217 individuals and 39 community broiler schemes. Also, the ministry supported the establishment of 52 compost pens to support 3 mini dairies that are being rehabilitated in Lower River Region, Central River Region South, and North Central River Region North to improve milk and meat production, as well as increase the availability of milk to the mini dairies. All the animals in the scheme have been vaccinated against black quarter, commonly known as BQ, and other animal diseases. To minimize crop livestock-related conflicts, the Department of Livestock Services, in collaboration with National Livestock Owners Association, recently concluded a countrywide sensitization of communities, as this is the period when conflicts are more common among crop farmers and livestock owners. The Ministry of Finance, and this is a brief by the Gambia Revenue Authority and its performance since COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the impact of COVID-19 on its revenue collection capacity, the Gambia Revenue Authority, GRA, has not relented in its effort to find ways and means of mobilizing the needed revenue for the state. As at end July 2020, The Gambia Revenue Authority collected a total of $7 billion and $42 million, 619.68 bututs. This represents an average collection of about $1 billion a month. The cumulative revenue collection as at end July also represented 5% nominal revenue growth compared to the corresponding period in 2019. The revenue performance by the Gambia Revenue Authority so far has been greatly influenced by the positive of the review and of 20. These administrative measures greatly contributed to the positive growth of customs receipts despite the drop in containerized import volumes. The other contributing factor has been the high revenue receipts from oil products as a result of lower world market prices and the zero subsidization of fuel products. In terms of domestic revenues, the main contributor has been domestic value-added tax and excise to telecom service receipts. The strong revenue performance of these two domestic revenue heads, in particular, is attributed to the fact that whilst people and businesses are restricted by COVID-19 regulations, people tend to depend more on internet and telecom services to communicate. As part of efforts to ease the burden on businesses in this pandemic period, the GRA, in consultation with the Ministry of Finance, implemented the following policy and administrative measures. 1, extension of tax returns filings and payment demands. 2, suspension of penalty and interest charges for late filing and payments. 3, suspension of field exercises, example, enforcement and audits. 4, the 20% reduction of accountable values on imported food items and hygiene products. 5, the granting of duty payment deferrals on fuel sales to oil marketing companies that invested in jet fuel supply and were affected by the abrupt closure of the airspace. And 6, payment plans are also being approved by the GRA for businesses in tax areas or financial difficulties during this COVID-19 period. The management of GRA remains ever committed to its mandate of collecting revenues for the state and enforcing the revenue laws, and stands ready to support businesses during this challenging period of COVID-19. The Ministry of Trade and Industry, and this is an update on the situation of Banjul Breweries Limited. The Ministry of Trade has been engaged in consultations with Banjul Breweries Limited since the announcement by the company to cease operations in the Gambia. The Ministry of Trade, aware that Banjul Breweries Limited, being a lead player in the beverage industry with strong upward and downward linkages to distributive trade networks in and out of the domestic market, initiated discussions with the company to minimize the shock of its cessation of operations on the economy and the hospitality industry in particular. Following the initial consultations, Ministry of Trade now wishes to inform the general public that Banjul Breweries has now sold out the beverage component to a Gambian investor who plans to relocate the machinery and equipment to a new establishment anytime soon. The brewery's component is still under the company's ownership, although there are investors who have expressed their interest to take over the facility. The Ministry of Trade is still engaging the management of Banjul Breweries Limited to reach a final conclusion on the cessation processes. Currently, the Ministry of Trade is in receipt of letters from potential investors who would like to take over the production facility anytime soon. Thank you so much. This is the briefing from the various ministries. And if you have questions, we are prepared to take them as we go. Thank you. I think, Sanusi, we can
Honorable,
questions. Yeah.
Yes, we can now move on to the question and answer session. And each person is required to raise his or her hand through the Zoom, and then we will give you the floor. So once we give you the floor, we will unmute you and we will unmute your video. So we would want to ask each person to ask one question, then we will go around for you to ask your second question in that fashion.
I can see also that the Gambia Talent, is trying to join in, and I think being online, you can also allow them to record the video. Yeah.
I have given them the permission, Honorable, for them to record.
Okay, thank you.
And they are going. So I just muted the Gambia Talents. So I have seen a hand raised, which is iAfrica. So I will unmute iAfrica for you to ask your question. iAfrica, you are unmuted. Can you accept?
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I want to ask my question on the issue of the Banjul breweries, because some of the staff there claim that the government of the Gambia is not willing to rescue the company. So how would you be saying most of the materials at the company are actually sold already? So how would you respond to that question?
Thank you so much. As far as the briefing that I got from the Ministry of Trade is concerned, the machinery that was sold actually was the one that has to do with the soft drink component. Discussions are ongoing to ensure that the remaining part of the brewery will be also negotiated so that it can be sold to potential investors. And as I said in my briefing, government is in receipt of interest letters from potential investors from different parts of the country and also from some Gambians who have shown interest in engaging the management to sell the brewery to them. If there is any sale of the machinery other than the one sold to a Gambian investor who is going to invest in the soft drink component, I'm not aware of that, but I can find that out.
Again, a follow-up to that, we also understand that some of the materials or equipment were sold to foreign investors, and even the drink bottle, it's no more available. Don't you think that with all these things happening in the company, it will not reduce the production capacity of the company or the value of the company?
Well, I mean, I know that Banjul Breweries is heavily connected in this country across different networks that are engaged in sale of soft drinks, but also even brewery in the country. Gambians love their local brewery, and that is why when the current management expressed their desire to cease operation in the Gambia, we engage them so that we will not cause some chaos, that it can be bought by people who want to continue the operation. And I believe that now that we have a Gambian who has bought the soft drink component, people will still continue to patronize the products.
Yes, let me move on to someone else who is interested in asking a question. Is there anyone who is interested to ask a question from Gambian Talents TV, QTV? Is there any? Okay, if there is none, okay, there is one hand raised from QTV. So Omar, I would allow you to ask your question. So I am just unmuting you, so you can go ahead, please. Omar, can you hear me? I just unmuted you. You can start asking your question if you have any. Hello, Omar, can you hear us? Hello, okay, now I will move on. Hence, Omar, maybe he has a technical difficulty at his end. So Buba Gajigo from Kerfatu has raised his hand. So I will unmute you. You are unmuted, Mr. Gajigo. You can go ahead and accept the unmute request and start asking your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. So my question will, of course, goes to the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education. There had been rumored, of course, people were saying that schools are opening next month on the 15th, actually. So many people called me about it. And then, do they have any information about school being open for parents? Do they have any information about it?
Well, I don't have any specific information on this, but I will ask the Ministry of Basic Education. I know that last week they made a statement that any thing that has to do with the opening of the schools will be very much based on the advice from the Ministry of Health and proper assessment of the pandemic situation in the country. Also, the Conference of Principals is also been engaged to discuss thoroughly the possibility of having schools open. And last week this week, in fact, Tuesday, I was on a platform with the head of the Conference of Principals. And part of the concerns that they've expressed was that in the Greater Banjul area, actually, schools are very much congested. Classrooms are very congested. And it may be that even if the schools are to open, it is not going to be the usual business of coming to school from 8 to, on a routine basis, on a daily basis, Monday to Friday, 8 to 4 o'clock, because, spacing has to be considered. But for most provincial schools, they believe it is possible because, they are not as congested as in the urban area. So I think, these discussions are ongoing, but I'm not aware that a date has been set for the schools to open.
Thank you. So I have another question. I don't know if I can be allowed.
Sure.
Yeah, last week I was at Madiana, where they are having this problem with their main road. It's like it's very difficult, and vehicles are not now going using, of course, the one connecting Burfu to Madiana. They are using Tangier to Madiana. That one also is not good, actually. So they're calling on the government for help. I don't know whether the government is aware of this.
Well, we are aware of the situation of road networks in the Greater Banjul area, stretching from Combo North, going all the way to Combo South, and also in Combo Central. And government has already done an assessment of the road infrastructure network in this country, and we got the data now that we need to have 4,000 kilometers of roads either rehabilitated or completely built afresh. And most of these roads that link the villages that are off the main highways are part of this. The Madianas, the Banyakangs, also the Kunkujang Mariamas, all the way to Jambur. Then you go to Yuna. You go to also other parts of Combo South, and also parts of the Sanementreng, constituency now, as they call it. So we have the data. We have already started the rehabilitation of some of the roads. Last week, I don't know whether you were here, but I have read a number of roads that are earmarked for rehabilitation, especially when the rains subside. And of course, based on the severity of the situation, I will contact the National Road Authority to find out whether this particular road is also part of the number of roads that they are going to, work on after the rains.
Thank you.
Thank you very much from Buba Gadigo. And I can see another hand raised, but that's iAfrica News again. So does anybody out of iAfrica TV and Gambia, Kelfatu have a question before I give it to iAfrica News? Okay, I can see QTV has raised their hand. So I will unmute QTV for you to go ahead and ask your question. Mr. Omar P. Jallo, you can go ahead. Mr. Omar P. Jallo, can you hear us? Mr. Omar P. Jallo, can you hear us? We cannot hear you.
Maybe he's still mute.
Yes.
Can you tell him to unmute himself?
He's already unmuted. He's already unmuted.
At his own end there.
Yes, it shows that he's unmuted. Okay, Mr. Omar P. Jallo from QTV, can you unmute yourself, please? Mr. Omar P. Jallo, can you unmute yourself, please? Okay, we will move on to iAfrica Newsroom for them to ask their question. And then, Omar, if you have any questions, you can just feel free to unmute yourself anytime. All right. iAfrica, you might go ahead with your second question.
All right. Another question that I want to ask is with regards to the students in Lebanon or other students around the world, Gambian students, and the relief package. How far with that? Last week you promised to give us an update on those that already have the relief package and those that did not have the relief package.
Yes, I realized that I did not include this in the briefing. But I was provided a small note on this. Maybe I have to find out then from the emails that were sent to me, and then later, before we finish the presser, I can provide you, if you don't mind, because I realized that I had some emails that came from that particular ministry. I think I can find that out for you.
All right. Okay.
Before we finish, and then
okay,
I will.
That's fine. Another question is with the issue of the economic forces and the extension in the Gambia. President Adama Barrow did request during the 57th ordinary session of the head of states and government that, he wants the extension of the economic mandate in the Gambia to another 6 months. We understand that the previous ones are funded by the EU, but this one, who is actually going to fund this 6 months extension requested by the government of the Gambia?
Thank you so much. I unfortunately did not have a briefing from the Ministry of Defense on this, especially the funding mechanism, since it was approved at the level of the ECOWAS heads of state. I would like to be given further time to get an appropriate answer from the responsible ministry to give me the answer.
Very well. Another question, which is the same thing on the COVID-19,
yes,
and of course its related funding. We want to know how much we understand that a lot of money have been given to the Gambia government by international bodies. So we want to know how much is spent so far on COVID-19 and on what? Yeah. Last week you also
Thank you
promised
so
to
much.
give us the data of that.
Yes, I requested this information from the Ministry of Health. They are compiling it as of this morning. I mean, before we start the press conference, I was on the phone with the permanent secretary. They are getting the figures because in addition to QTV, journalist Dabo, Mustafa Dabo also requested this, and it is a bulky document. So they are compiling all the figures and the data, including the procurement done. I thought I was going to get it before coming on air, but unfortunately it is not ready. So I'm waiting for that.
Okay, Honorable. All right, let me give it to others for the meantime.
Okay, thank you so much, iAfrica TV. So we'll move back to Omar P. Jallo at QTV. Omar P. Jallo, can you unmute yourself and ask your question? Omar, we cannot hear you. Omar, can you hear us? Okay. He doesn't seem to have. I think he's having some technical issues at his end. So we'll move on to.
Sanusi, I don't know whether my picture is coming out clearly because I'm trying to, retrieve this document on the schools. So it's covering the screen.
Yes, your video is coming out clearly. There's no interruption.
All right, thank you.
All right. Omar P, we are unable to get Omar P. So does anyone have questions? Like Gambia Talents, okay, I have seen Kerfatu Buba Gajigo with another request. Okay, I'm unmuting you right now. You can go ahead and ask your question. Buba Gajigo from Kerfatu.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much once again. So this one is about the markets. Last week they were about to engage on a sit-down strike, and then they have of course some engagement with the ministry, and they were convinced not to go for a sit-down strike. Actually, and it's like they were told they will be considered in the definitely coming probably. Maybe the coming, if there will be any, of course, curfew that will be done in the Gambia, they will be considered there actually. So do they have, what are the plans that they have for these people? And because I have an interview with them last week, and they said the curfew is ending next week Wednesday. And if there is nothing that is changed, they will be engaging in a sit-down strike. After their meeting, they told me that it will be on the 21st. So do you have any plans for these people?
Well, government has a plan for them. I don't want to say anything yet on this because I don't know basically how the details would roll out. But what I do know is that we had a very fruitful discussion with them, and we made it very clear to them that government had seen their letter of concern, and we deliberated on it, and we also share their concerns. We sympathize with them on some of the issues that they have raised, but we also made it clear to them that this particular regulation is already gazetted. So what they want us to do to change it completely abruptly may be difficult because you have to go through a process, especially that their demand came at a time when the current, curfew is, or health emergency curfew imposed, at this time is going to end on the 21st. So it's like barely a week now. So we we thought that, it is important to allow this one to pass. And then, now that they have made personal request, so, all the options can be considered, and then, government will see what is possible.
Okay, so this one maybe we'll do with the Ministry of Fisheries, because I was at Gunjur also, actually, and then the fishermen there were complaining that their time is changed. They used to go for fishing by 4 a.m. and government said now the time will be 6. They will go 6, which is definitely, according to them, is bringing so many difficulties there. And then it is in fact the cause of the rise of fish in the Gambia. They said before the basket was $350, now it has risen to $1,000. That's why fish is very difficult. So they are given a time that they are not happy with, and they actually, according to them, they don't know why they are given that time.
Well, I think maybe the people that you talk to probably are new in the industry, but the issue of putting a moratorium on night fishing is not new in the industry. Also, I mean, because small boats are allowed to fish within a certain zone, and that particular zone also is where sometimes you have these small fishes where they do their breeding. And sometimes when they go at night, you realize that they catch these small fish that are not supposed to be caught. So as part of a policy to ensure that we don't endanger our fish stock, especially within specific zones, this policy was initiated, and it's not a new policy. It has been going on for a long time. It's part of the Fisheries Enhanced Program to ensure that, fishermen within this time of the year are allowed to do a roster system where from 6 to 7 they are allowed to go at sea, but at night they allow the fish to breed and also allow the small fish to also breed in that particular area. And I think, most of the fishermen in some of these coastal towns are aware of this. They are always fully engaged by the government. All these fishing, coastal villages have fisheries offices, and they engage the communities there, the local authorities, and also the stakeholders in the fish sector. So I think maybe some of the people that you talk to are new in the sector, or maybe they are not fully informed. But this is the idea behind it. Unfortunately, if inadvertently the scheme caused the abrupt in it, but in the Gambia also remember the scarcity of fish and the pricing can depend on a number of factors. It can be climatic weather conditions, like, when there is a lot of wind, the fishermen or the fisher folks definitely don't go to sea. It can also depend on the festive seasons, especially in Senegal, because that this sector is dominated not by Gambians, but by people from neighboring countries. And when they have this feast, they actually leave the job and then they go to their countries. So during that period, if we don't have a stock, unfortunately, we experience scarcity. And because the market equation is that demand and supply, when there is less in the market, the prices tend to go up. And that is why the Ministry of Fisheries has now initiated a program to encourage young Gambians to be involved in the fisheries sector. Currently, they have bought some, small boats for young Gambians, the motorized boats for young Gambians to use. And this is going to be expanded. It's like a pilot scheme to study first and to look at the interests of young Gambians in this sector. And if there is an expanded interest, then it can be upscaled so that more young people can benefit, and then we can take ownership of our own natural resource.
Quite well. In fact, they engaged me about that also, because according to them, majority of these people are Senegalese, and then the Senegalese, of course, right now, most of them went back. So yes. It's like they said the Senegalese government, they are really helping their citizens to have these boats there so that they can have enough of it. They said, but there is nothing like this in the Gambia. So you have to get your own boat, or you join the Chinese there. And if you sign a contract with the Chinese, you are not going to have any, maybe you cannot fish for definitely to sell. So you have to give everything to that man. So that's the problem. Do you have plans to buy some of these boats and give it to them? Maybe they can pay back, or anyhow. Do you have any plans like that?
Well, let me tell you that, the Ministry of Fisheries has been dealing with communities in schemes similar to this, even in the rural areas. I mean, some of you who actually are familiar with fish landing points in Kiang and also in parts of CRR and URR will know that the government used to collaborate with coastal villages or those that are on the riverbeds, and they are provided with fishing gear, not only boats, but nets and other materials, but also they are provided with landing sites and small cold store. Unfortunately, I mean, as time went by, and this started during the First Republic, some of these landing sites were abandoned. And in the urban area also, some of these things that are being initiated, government is studying it seriously, because you have a lot of young people now who are expressing interest, to be engaged in the fish sector or in the fisheries sector. And it is important that we start a moderate scheme. We study its impact, and then we can look at behavioral issues also, because in most cases here, it is difficult when people don't see the immediate benefit, they may quit. And then, it's important you do a good pilot scheme. And then when you have the data, then you can upscale. And hopefully within the next few months, now that we have seen this project started, it's not even only in the urban area. Some rural fishing areas will be provided with the boats and all their necessary gears, so that it can be revived back. Some landing sites are also being renovated as part of the process to encourage our own people to take charge of the fisheries sector.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question from Ken Fatu. I would like to ask whether Gambia Talents TV, you have any questions? If you do,
I just read a message from QTV that they are having a problem with their audio. So if you can send them the script.
Yes.
So that they can, yes, please.
I will do that. I will send them the script. And if QTV, QTV can send me the link.
But before we go to QTV, let me read, before we go to QTV, can I read this update that I got from the Ministry of Higher Education that I read in one of our programs some time ago? I hope my video is coming out now.
Yes, your video is coming.
Okay, because I'm now reading the script. So let me read you this. The Ministry of Higher Education. The Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology recently paid over $12,900,000 to non-government funded Gambian students studying abroad. A total of 836 Gambian students in different parts of the world benefited from this package with a $300 one-off payment. This was part of government's initial response to support non-government funded students abroad. Currently, the Ministry of Higher Education is pursuing additional funds to support the remaining set of students who are yet to receive help in the first phase. Similarly, the Higher Education Ministry was able to fast-track the annual top-up stipend for the academic year 2019-2020, amounting to over $16 million for 321 students, equivalent to $317,680 US. These said students are the ones who have gone through the Ministry of Higher Education through bilateral cooperation and are not supposed to benefit from COVID-19 support. These are students in Sudan, India, Tunisia, Morocco, and Indonesia. So you ask about Morocco, and government here is saying that the Ministry of Higher Education has fast-tracked their stipend for the academic year 2019-2020, which was over $16 million, and this was given to 321 students, and these are the ones who actually have gone through the Ministry of Higher Education through bilateral cooperation and are not supposed to benefit from COVID-19 support. So I guess this answers your question.
Thank you very much, Honorable. And I would, Omar from QTV has a question, but he typed it.
Yeah, he said how soon the flood victims will benefit from the 15 million government has given or government has pledged. The data collection is already going on, and as soon as that data is provided, Gambia government has pledged to provide a rapid support. To the victims. So the NDMA and the partners, as I read in the test, are actually working hard to finalize the data and then submit it to the relevant authorities.
Thank you, Honorable. From that, we will move on to Gambia Talents TV if you have any questions. If not, we will take one more question from iAfrica Newsroom. And from there, we would wrap it with the permission of the Honorable Minister to wrap today's session. All right, I will give you the floor, iAfrica TV. You are requested to unmute.
All right, thank you very much. Well, Honorable Minister.
Can you go ahead and accept?
Yes.
iAfrica TV, you are still
can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. QTV has asked another question before I go to, don't mute iAfrica. Just, he said, how soon will the flood victims start to benefit from that one is the old question. He sent a new question.
He said also, what is government doing to prevent future floods or mitigate?
Yeah, future floods, yes. Well, actually, this will include building the necessary infrastructure, especially in the flood-prone areas. Also working with the Ministry of Environment and other relevant ministries to improve the infrastructure, but also to plant more trees, because in some parts of URR, the floods are attributed to water coming from Senegal with a ferocity that has actually caused the damage in some of these villages, and also in some parts of the North Bank region. And that is why, government is working with partners to intensify the, afforestation process, to plant more trees, but also, to look at the environmental issues also, climate change issues, to provide the necessary information. The NDMA is working with partners to have some of these, technologies that will provide adequate information on, flood patterns or rainfall patterns that can be predicted, and give the appropriate advice to the farming community and also to the population. But also, in some of these places, dikes have to be built, and also, embankments to make sure that rainwater are diverted. So these are all, important, initiatives that, in fact, have started in some parts of rural Gambia, especially where floods are most severe. You remember in Kuntaur, some 3 years ago when they had that severe flood, they actually excavated some of the rivers, and the embankments were built to make sure that the town is protected from future severe flooding. So these have already started in some parts of the country.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable, once again. iAfrica TV, we will move on to you. So no, yes, it's iAfrica TV who wanted to ask a question.
Yes.
You can go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. Well, I want to ask about the recent, of course, departure and arrival levy increment at the Banjul International Airport. This move or decision from the Gambia government, as announced by the Minister of Tourism, have left some Gambians wondering whether is it that borders are finally reopened or still closed, especially the airways. What can you say to this, Honorable Minister?
Well, let me make a correction that it was not the Ministry of Tourism that made the announcement. It was the Gambia Civil Aviation Authority. The borders are still closed, although government is allowing some flights to come into the country, especially the SM Brussels that is bringing in stranded Gambians or those that want to join their family on some immediate urgencies, and some of the people that are also stranded here, and they need to get back to their respective countries. So the anticipation of the opening of the airspace was announced 2 weeks ago by myself here in our regular press briefing, where we brief the media on the plans by the Ministry of Tourism to open up and also start the tourist season in October.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
No. On the security,
yes,
on the issue of the security sector reform, most experts blasted the government for the failure of the security sector reform. They said the reason for that is because of the presence of the foreign troops, that is the economic forces in the Gambia. So and lack of government's political will as well. So what is the response of the government on that?
Well, there are a lot of school of thoughts when it comes to policy initiatives, but as far as the government is concerned, there is a strong political will. There is an office responsible for security sector reform. In fact, we are working with a number of international organizations on this. Sometimes some of these things are intangible. It means you cannot, see them physically, but the process is ongoing. I mean, yes, certain things may be slow, but the truth of the matter is that there is strong commitment to the security sector reform.
Another issue is with regards to child rape in the Gambia. Every week you hear on social media or local newspapers, writing about child sex or child rape in the Gambia here. And most of the civil society organizations and child rights activists have, criticized the government about that. They're saying that the government is not doing much when it comes to the protection of children in the Gambia. What is your response to that?
Well, I want to assure you that government takes seriously any abuse of children, especially as it relates to sexual molestation. And we have very strong laws. The Department of Social Welfare under the Ministry of Women's and Social Welfare works tirelessly with the security forces, especially the police. In fact, the police also have a whole unit responsible for child welfare issues and, things like rape, even beyond the issue of children's matters, is a very serious matter. Some degree of rape is seen as war crime, and you can be prosecuted for that. And the Gambia government has very strong laws that are being used to deal with, rape. But also remember that when these things happen, sometimes families sit on it. They don't want it to be reported to the authorities. That is a problem. By the time sometimes it gets to authorities, it is too late. Maybe the victim has disappeared, or the perpetrator has disappeared, and the victim unwilling also to cooperate with the authorities. So I emphasize here is to urge parents and families and the community to report this type of incidents as quickly as possible. Law enforcement agencies having the necessary scientific, evidence to deal with some of these things. Face masks are really, really, really important, and that is why we emphasize that at all times when you are in the public, you can put it on. You can put it on. Now, I mean, I am not responsible for the president's diary, and I'm sure that you have seen when he returned back, he went through the normal check at the airport, the temperature and everything. And, at the end of the day,